Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, October 4th, 2016 Selectmen's meeting. Before we get started, I just want to have a moment of silence for Mike Asapa's recent passing. Passed away Sunday night. He was a longtime member of the Stadium Advisory Committee, and if anybody saw him in action up at the stadium, he thought that place was his, and he made sure everything was in order. So, just a moment of silence. Thank you. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family.
Mr. Chairman, he was actually, I meant to get back to on this, but he was actually a member of that Stadium Advisory since 2000. Wow. So 16 years as a member of that committee, so we obviously are greatly appreciative of all his services to the community and his dedication to that effort. Thank you for doing that.
I'll read the agenda. 7 o'clock we'll have citizen input. Topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. 7:05, Pam Atanasoff, Jared Craig, Foxborough Cultural Council. Discussion vote on Jared Craig becoming a member of the Foxborough Cultural Council, expiring 10/4/2019. 7:10, John Conley, David Coffey, Veteran Service Advisory Committee. Discussion vote on David Coffey becoming a member of the Veteran Services Advisory Committee, expiring 10/4/2017. 7:15, Bangkok CAFÉ, public hearing. Forgive me, I'm going to screw up that name, so I'm not even going to bother.
Okay. We'll let you explain that one.
Yeah, discussion vote on alteration of premises, change of location. 7:25, Renaissance Hotel at Patriot Place, public hearing. Attorney Karen Samayo, Scott Williams, manager. Discussion vote on alteration of premises, change of DBA. 7:35, Economic Development Committee, Lorraine Brew, Paige Duncan, Kevin Weinfeld, Barnett Overroot. Discussion vote on Kevin Weinfeld and Barnett Overroot becoming ex officio members of Economic Development Committee. 7:45, Economic Development Committee, Lorraine Brew, Paige Duncan. Discussion vote to approve funds for field survey of former fire station and former funeral home downtown. 7:55, Conservation Commission, Bob Bodie. Discussion vote on 120 Spring Street sale, continued from 9/20/2016. 8:05, Conservation Commission, Bob Bodie. Discussion vote on acceptance of 27 Lakeview Road property. 8:15, William Keegan, special town meeting warrant, review changes, close warrant. 8:25, Selectmen's update. 8:35, Bill Keegan, town manager update. 8:45, Mary Beth Bernard, assistant town manager update. And Chris, will you lead us in?
Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, a little past 7. Is anybody here for citizens' input? Seeing none, let's go right into our 7:05. Pam? Mr. Craig?
Good evening. I'm bringing to you Jared Craig and enthusiastically recommending him for membership in the Foxborough Cultural Council. And Jared is a seasoned actor, so I figured sitting before the Board of Selectmen would be a piece of cake for him if he's used to going on auditions. And if it's okay with you, I'll let Jared speak about his experience and his interests when he gets involved in the council.
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me tonight. Like Pam said, I'm an actor. I've been acting professionally since I graduated from college. I went to Boston University, and they have a conservatory program there. I went through that and then worked primarily in Boston, had an internship at the Huntington Theater Company, which is one of the 2 larger regional theater companies in Boston. Did that for a year under the tutelage of Nicholas Martin, who's a Tony-nominated director and was artistic director of the theater at the time. I became very close with him and got to work with him as an assistant director and got to see how he worked behind closed doors, which was added to my life experience incredibly. And I got to work with him as an actor, so I got both sides of the table from him, which I've grown so much from him, and he sadly has passed away since. But from there, I've worked at the ART as an actor, and that's the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge. That's the second of the two large regional theaters in Boston. The production that I did there actually was directed by a French director who ended up taking our play. We did Julius Caesar there to France several times, and I've gotten to work on another separate project with him, which is a Jean Genet play, a French play, which has toured to South Korea, Spain, France, and Switzerland, and we've even had a small showing in New York City in the U.S. here, and we're hoping for a U.S. tour eventually. But it's been an incredible ride on that as well. So I'm a father. I have 3 kids in Foxborough, young kids who have just started preschool, so they're in the school system, up and coming public schools, and culture and the arts mean a lot to me, and I was looking for a way to sort of cultivate that in the town that I now call home. And I've been very involved with the high school here. I'm the co-advisor of the drama program, which we call the Foxborough High School Theater Guild. So we've grown that program slowly over the last 3 years and are continuing to grow it now. We're doing a production of The Crucible, of Arthur Miller's The Crucible this year, as a way to sort of introduce students to the way that theater from the past can influence the present and in the time that it was written, which was during the Red Scare. So it's obviously something that they study, I think, sophomore year, and I'm trying to find sort of ways to bridge that co-curriculum gap and really give them a chance to delve deeper. So to me, the way that I found a way into academics is the same way I find my way into a role, is I make it personal. So once I sort of learned that in high school, we did a Russian play at the time I was studying the Russian Revolution, and it was the only time I did good in history until that point, was when I had this character that I cared about, and learning about that period of time really put me in the time and the place of this character, and I paid attention and got excited in ways that I'd never been excited before. So I'm hoping to bring that to particularly the students of Foxborough, but the community at large, with my theater expertise. Expertise sounds a little strange to say, but I do think that it is a unique town because you have a space here, being the Orpheum Theater. You also have a beautiful auditorium at the high school that is perfectly suited for theatrical productions as well. So I'd like there to be a strong voice on the Cultural Council for the theater arts. And one of the things I've been sort of trying to start here is that these students who are actually rehearsing upstairs without me while I come down here to speak to you guys, is that they all have very strong voices. Especially, I've noticed with this election cycle being so heated, they all, I think there's 1 or 2 people in the cast that can vote, but they all are involved. And I'd like to find a way, with the Cultural Council's help, hopefully, to find a sort of year-round forum for them to have a voice, do their own productions of student-written, student-performed, student-directed shows. Obviously, that would have to be advised by either myself or Ms. Macharnik, the co-advisor. But I just want you to know that I would be honored to serve, and that you would be electing someone who's very enthusiastic about the town itself and the arts in general. So thank you for having me.
Great. Any questions from the board?
No, you seem very well qualified.
Thank you.
I think it'd be a great asset to the town and to the committee, council.
Absolutely. Imagine our excitement. The last person I brought before you was more of a specialist in visual art, and Jared has a lot of experience and expertise in theater arts. And we're also talking with Jared about having student liaisons, someone from the theater program who maybe wouldn't be a voting member, but who could give a perspective of a young person from the community with a lot of theatrical passion. So very excited about what Jared's going to bring, should you say yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you. You had me at hello. I'll go back up with you people.
Thank you.
Love the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion?
Move to accept Mr. Craig onto the council.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? No? Seeing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Outstanding.
much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
See.
Jared, stop at the office sometime. Me and you do story your story.
All right, 7:10, John Conley, David Coffey.
Good evening.
Mr. Conley.
Thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm here in place of Michael Johns. He's on a training mission with the state. I come before you tonight to ask for acceptance of Mr. David Coffey. He is a Vietnam veteran from the United States Army. We want to add him to our committee for his expertise and a chance to give veterans a voice on the committee. David served in the United States Army. He's retired, I believe, Master Sergeant. And I think his expertise from the United States Army would be a benefit and able to get out to the community and draw in more veterans to our committee and to help more veterans that maybe aren't willing to come forward. Excuse me. In addition to Mr. Coffey's application for the committee, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the Board of Selectmen to Veterans Day's events at the high school. At the event this time, we're going to have an additional new guest speaker, Mr. Lawrence Kirby, retired Sergeant USMC, combat veteran from Iwo Jima. He's also a author of a book on 2 battles that he fought in Iwo Jima. Second, I'd like to make mention we'll have a new singer at the Veterans Day event, Julia Carson, who sang at the recent POW MIA event. Very good voice.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, she'll be there as well. And I believe that's it, unless the board has some questions they'd like to ask me or Mr. Coffey.
Open up to the board. Any questions for Mr. Coffey or Mr. Conley?
Once again, it looks like Mr. Coffey's well qualified to add some expertise onto your council.
Thank you very much for your service to the country.
Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you or seeing you in action here. Appreciate it.
All right, and thank you for volunteering to be on this committee, to come forward for that.
We're trying to draw in veterans from all conflicts and all branches. And it's difficult because many veterans come home and sometimes they just want to be left alone. But we need their help desperately, and that's why we asked Mr. Coffey to join us.
Great.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm interested is because I know there are veterans out there who need help. And, I'm willing to work with the rest of the committee to come up with ways to be able to reach them.
Great.
Excellent. Thank
Awesome. We'll see you all there at Veterans Day, right?
Yep.
At least for the snacks.
What time? 10 o'clock?
I believe 9 o'clock, the auditorium's going to be open. The event starts, I think, somewhere around 11. We'll have the crowds coming in and seated, and it's extended into the back room for refreshments afterwards till 1 o'clock.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Welcome.
We're going to make
Take
the
the vote.
motion.
Oh, sorry.
Move to accept Mr. Coffey onto the council advisory committee.
Second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, good luck.
Okay, 7:15, Bangkok CAFÉ public hearing.
Yes.
The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Foxborough, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, October 4th, 2016, at 7:15 p.m. in the Foxborough High School Media Center, 120 South Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, on an application for an alteration of premises and change of location of an annual all-alcoholic beverage restaurant license for Sidukul Corporation, doing business as Bangkok CAFÉ, 369 Central Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts. Manager, go ahead, pronounce your name.
โอเคไม่เรื่องเดทที่ดีสุดที่ครู
What he said.
Is it Rungdet?
yes ลองเดท
You can call him Danny.
Danny, there you go.
That's easy.
All interested persons are invited to attend the hearing.
Okay. So you filed an application to, in our package, we have an application to alter the space, and is it an actual physical change of address, or is it just renumbering the existing stores?
Good evening. My name is Todd Glickman. I'm Danny's partner. I've been helping him with the application. As you know, there's a new landlord. Foxfield Plaza is transitioning to Forbes Center, Forbes Crossing. The physical mailing address is 369 Central Street. We have been informed informally that the post office address will change to 10 Foxborough Boulevard. But my understanding is the post office has not communicated that yet, or the landlord has not communicated it to the tenants formally. Therefore, the application was filed as the existing street address of 369 Central Street, which is the entire plaza, and Danny's Restaurant is going to move from one corner to the other corner.
Okay, so he's moving from Unit E to what, for right now, is known as Unit 210?
My understanding is the old unit number was Unit 10, and under the new scenario of Foxborough Boulevard will become Unit 210. But again, the landlord has not officially communicated that.
He's still trying to work through those
Yeah.
details.
So is he going to the other side where the auto parts accessory
Exactly.
used to be?
Exactly.
Okay.
yes
Yes.
And when is the transfer, when you going to start moving in or start building out?
It's under construction now.
it's
Oh,
under
it is?
construction yes
Okay.
yes
Danny's current right to be in the current store ends in approximately 2 to 2.5 weeks, and then he's starting to pay rent on the new one, so obviously he'd like to move as quickly as possible.
When will the construction be ready?
in 3 weeks
3 weeks?
yes
So this is,
Move in and move out.
so this is a complete build-out?
yes
Yeah.
How much is your existing store now? How is the new one gonna be same size, bigger,
50% bigger
50% bigger?
yes
Okay,
yeah from 1200 to 2500 square feet
okay. And the actual construction will start in 3 weeks, or will be done in 3 weeks?
it will be done in 3 weeks
Done in 3 weeks. When is it scheduled to start?
It's already started.
it's already started
already
yeah,
started.
it's already
Okay.
the perfect
Okay.
yes, yes.
I wasn't sure if
Yeah.
exterior stuff was started, okay.
The focus has been primarily on the interior side of the building right now to get the various businesses relocated. And then the exterior construction is underway as well, but the real focus is trying to get that done, so we can keep you open.
Any more questions from the board? Seeing none.
Move to accept the application for an alteration of his premises and change.
It's a public hearing.
I apologize.
Yep.
Move to close the public hearing.
Well, we gotta ask,
Apologies.
anybody here from the public have any comments or concerns regarding this applicant? Seeing none. Motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Okay.
Move to approve the application for alteration of premises and change of location.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Good luck, Danny.
Yeah, good luck with your
Thank you.
move.
Good luck.
Thank you.
They're scheduled. No, it's good. Much.
Take some action items.
We're ahead of schedule, so we do some
Yeah, so
action.
then, here, yeah, sure, let me,
You can slow it down if you want.
I will do some action items. We'll, first one, move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $300 for programs at the Senior Center from Friends of Foxborough Seniors.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Move to accept a gift donation to the Council on Aging in the amount of $150 for half of a Tai Chi in August at Senior Center from Friends of Foxborough Seniors.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Move to accept a gift donation to the Recreation Department in the amount of $500 from the Friends of Foxborough Recreation.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Move to accept a Hackney license for Charles C. Elliott.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Right.
Move to accept a Hackney license for Anthony Cassier.
Second.
Made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Move to accept reimbursement of $1,103.64, a tuition reimbursement for Officer Mark Bonenberger.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none?
Just under discussion, it's unusual for me anyways, Mr. Keegan. The reason that the selectmen are approving this, wouldn't this be under their contract as an automatic reimbursement? This is the reimbursement for work under the bachelor's degree. I'm just wondering why it's coming through this table, if this is per his or her contract.
In Article 11 of the contract, the chief is required to submit reimbursement request to the Board of Selectmen within 15 days. So it's been a process that, they don't happen that often, so that's probably why.
Okay.
I think the last
So-
one was about 2 years ago.
So I don't think anyone has an issue with this, but do we have the ability or the jurisdiction to say no on this? Is this under their contract? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's
It
required to
does-
come in front of
It's
us.
contingent upon your approval for reimbursement.
Right.
So you may feel at some point that, you've been advised that there's not enough budget, or
Okay.
it's not a required course of study.
So we still take it on a case-by-case
You do.
basis?
Right.
Okay.
But it is contractual.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it is contractual. It's just, there is, the exception would be if there was something that you saw that was really out of line with this in terms of,
Possibly failed the course.
or if we failed the course, or if it was an inappropriate course, something like that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the annual Halloween parade on Saturday, October 28th, 2016, from 2:30 to 4.
Second.
And it's October 29th, we're told.
Oh,
I'm gonna have two of them,
We said,
in case the first one sucks.
in case anybody shows with the wrong date. This is the 28th on the thing.
yeah,
Does it say 28th?
it says 28th on the list.
It's actually the
Oh,
29th.
okay.
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah,
will,
it says Saturday.
I will start again. So Saturday is the 29th then? Okay.
Correct.
So approve the annual Halloween parade on Saturday, October 29th, 2016, from 2:30 to 4.
Second that.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Yeah. Move to accept a gift donation in the amount of $550 to the Recreation Department for maintaining and repairing the Foxborough Skate Park from the Foxborough Skate Park Association.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. 7:26, Renaissance Hotel, Patriot Place, public hearing. Discussion vote on alteration of premise, change of DBA.
The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Foxborough, acting as the local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, October 4th, 2016, at 7:25 PM in the Foxborough High School Media Center, 120 South Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, on an application for an alteration of premises and change of DBA of an annual all-alcoholic beverage restaurant license for Colwert Management, Inc., doing business as the Renaissance Hotel at Patriot's Place, 28 Patriot Place, Foxborough, Mass. Manager Scott Williams. All interested persons are invited to attend.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Karen Simeo, McDermott, Quilty, and Miller. To my left is Mr. Scott Williams, who is the existing manager of record on the license. And to his left is Mr. John Mitchell, who is... Scott Liedman. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Been a long day. Not enough coffee. Scott Liedman, who is the manager of record currently on the beer and wine license at the location that is also part of the discussion today.
So, can you explain what's going on?
What's happening?
Yeah. it was-
Absolutely.
I read through it and it was a little confusing.
No problem. I absolutely love coming to Foxborough, and I've been here a lot lately, so I'm glad that it's been for all good business. And I feel like we're a little bit full circle today. So back in May, on May 3rd, at the Selectmen's meeting, I was here with Scott on the Hilton Garden Inn location. And at that time, I actually had to pull the minutes from that meeting to refresh my memory of, we had so many discussions about the status of things that I wanted to make sure I was accurately revisiting what we had talked about at that meeting. At that May 3rd meeting, I actually had opened up the hearing by saying to the board that we had hoped to be able to extend the existing all-alc license at the neighboring hotel location to the Hilton Garden Inn, but that as of that date, we had not figured out a way to do that just yet, for a few different reasons. One of which was what we thought was a public way between, a small public way between the two hotels. And so at that May meeting, we were here talking about the fact that we're excited for this hotel to open, but we needed some kind of alcohol service to be available. The town had, at that time, 2 wine and malt licenses available. And so we said that in the absence of being able to extend the existing license, that we were applying for one of those malt and wines. And of course, our preference was then, and continues to be today, to extend the description of the licensed premises so that the town is only using one license to cover this whole property. There is common ownership both in the real property as well as in the hotel operations. So that is the reason that we are able to do this. And under Chapter 138, an innholder's license is permitted to service multiple buildings on the same property. The piece that we were concerned about, which was that public way in the Patriots Place alleyway there, turns out was not public property. So it's all part of the same property on which these hotels are located, which opened up the ability for us to come back and do what we had originally wanted to do, which was apply to extend the description of the premises of the current hotel to include the Hilton Garden Inn next door. So we're happy to be able to do that. We think it's a benefit not only to our business, but to the town to also not have two licenses tied up at this premises. Presuming the board agrees to extend the description of the licensed premises, once we get ABCC approval, we would then surrender that malt and wine license back to the town. I do want to just note, however, we're hoping that the Garden Inn is opening in 3 weeks. I don't know that we would have ABCC approval, presuming the board is on board with this. So we would likely have to open that property with the malt and wine initially to have some service. But I believe that would be a short period of time that the ABCC is really good about working, especially with hotel properties, to make these things happen in a timely manner. It's interesting because since the last time we were here, there is a price point differentiation, as I'm sure the board can imagine if you're not aware of, between the Renaissance and the Hilton Garden Inn, of course. And we've actually had a lot of inquiries for weddings and other social events to be held at the Hilton Garden Inn. Of course, the first question has been, what are your offerings? And as of today, we've had to say it's limited to malt and wine that's been approved. But we're hopeful that we'll be able to correct that and be able to cater to and keep the business in Foxborough rather than having them go somewhere else for these same events. So I don't know that clarified any of the questions that you may have had, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to sort of revisit where we've been, because there's been so many hearings related to this property. And again, I feel like we've now come full circle to do what I think that everybody agreed would have been a great idea, but at the time we didn't think that we could do it, and we now have cleared up the issue with the ABCC and are comfortable being here today.
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to the fact that I did meet with the building commissioner, and I reviewed this application with him, and he confirms the fact that this that what you've stated for the record is accurate, that that is allowable. So we've also checked to confirm that the fact that actually Marcia checked with the ABCC to confirm as well that this is possible to do under the rules and regulations and the provisions of the law. Probably one of the better examples of where this happens is more likely on the Cape, where you have some large resort buildings. Chatham Bars Inn, I think, is probably a classic example of that, where they have multiple bars on premises, but it's all under one license. So they're approaching this in the same type of mannerism that is being used down in the Cape and other locations as well. It is unusual, admittedly. It's the first time I've ever seen something done like this since I've been involved in government, but it's not uncommon. It does happen, and this is given the fact that they are so close in proximity. It is probably a good example of how it could actually occur.
So, going back to the May 3rd, going through the notes, was our understanding that you were trying to figure out how to make a physical connection between the two buildings to bypass that alleyway? And that, so because it's not a public way,
Correct.
There's no need to have a physical
That's right.
connection?
That's right.
Actually, we almost prefer not to have that, to be honest with you, because it just because it could have a negative impact on the egress and access to the building. So it's probably better to keep it the way it is. That was the discussion point we had internally about that. That way.
So there's no way to go from the Hilton Garden directly to the Renaissance? You have to go outside?
You would have to go outside and then across this alleyway, which is actually private. It's all part of the same property.
So the original connection that we were looking at was never an enclosed connection.
Right.
It was going to be some sort of an awning or canopy that connected the two, so that visually there would be some connection. And again, based on the meetings with the town, I'm not sure if it was the building inspector or the fire.
The fire department actually
preferred to
expressed the
not.
concerns because it could actually impede the access to the building in terms of fire protection, if in fact they had to get a truck in between to address.
How wide's that access?
How wide is that access point, do you know?
30 at the most.
30 feet, they're about 30 feet.
So you can get a vehicle in there.
Right.
And so legally, that connection point isn't required. We felt that it may, that frankly, the building department may have preferred it to give that connection, but
Right.
post the meetings with them and the fire department, the reaction was we'd actually prefer not to have it, as Mr. Keegan stated.
Dave, through the chair. What changed between then and now that made it public versus a private way? What did you find? What did you?
There was no, it was just misinformation that we had. There was no document that changed. There was no title that changed hands. There was no, it was
There was no
just.
formal change of status. It was
Correct.
just misinformation.
So you just assumed, using the word assume, that it was a public?
Right, people on the team had made a presumption that because of the public access coming in and out of it, that it was some sort of a public alleyway, but once we dug into it, it wasn't.
It
So-
never was?
Correct.
Okay, so nothing changed that
Correct.
day.
So actually, the status of the real estate today is as it was on May 3rd.
Okay,
We just reported incorrectly.
yeah.
If down the road, you felt there would be a need to connect the buildings, like filling in that, that area, is that something that the fire department would object to? Because to me, it makes more sense if you're, it makes more sense to me for the buildings to be connected. But from a fire prevention perspective, I don't know. And would that be something that the fire would?
If in fact, it's a good question, Jenny. So if in fact there was a physical connection, in other words, they rebuilt the building so there was actually one solid building, that's a different perspective because all this so-called crosswalk or alleyway or walkway would have done was just impeded the access in between the two buildings. But if you close in the buildings physically, that's a different perspective because now it's just one single building. So it wouldn't be necessarily an issue from that perspective at that point. It's just the fact that now that because they are separate buildings, you want to maintain the full circumference of access to the building.
Right.
Oh, because it makes more sense to connect the buildings. I mean, even in issuing the liquor license, it just seems more logical if they were connected.
Right. And I think I can see from certainly the licensing perspective and if it's something that the town hasn't seen before, I can see how that makes sense. As Mr. Keegan noted, this isn't an uncommon thing on other properties. I can say from a business perspective, of course, these are two very different brands. So when we have either a corporation or a bride or other social events come in, if they want to book with a Renaissance brand, that's the brand they want to book with as opposed to the Hilton Garden Inn brand and vice versa. So from a business perspective, we actually always would have preferred to not have the connector. We just wanted to do what we needed to do to comply. Of course, and who knows where any of us will be down the road or what happens, but if there were to be some sort of acquisition where they wanted to make the whole building one of those two brands, then of course that kind of connection would make a whole lot of sense from a business perspective. I certainly understand the question from a licensing perspective.
So say the owners decide to sell Hilton Gardens to another, breaking that up, where would the license be?
So they would have, if they were selling the Hilton Garden portion of the premises, just like anything else, they would have to come to the board and ask for a change of ownership and an alteration of premises because it would no longer be common ownership of the hotels.
Right, okay, so then there would be need for two
licenses.
Then, correct, then.
Right, because it's separate ownership.
Then a new owner would have to come in and do what they need to do with the town. That's right.
But so the license is going with which hotel as a priority?
There is no priority per se currently. We have to run off of the existing licensee, which is the Renaissance Hotel. So that's why we're filing to amend the Renaissance's license. But once the licensed premises covers both hotels, in theory, if the Renaissance portion was sold, we could come in and ask for a change of ownership and amend the description of premises to only cover the other hotel. There's not, once the licensed premises covers both locations, it covers both locations. Of course, its starting point will always have been at the Renaissance.
Okay.
And that is where, because that's where it currently is today.
It's the base license.
But the license change that we're gonna change is gonna say DBA Renaissance and Hilton Garden.
That's correct.
Okay, so
It
we'll
would
have
need
both
to-
separate names in.
That is correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
But to be clear, it's common ownership of the same ownership of the company that runs
That
both hotels.
supersedes.
That's correct.
Question through the chair. So I understand the common ownership on the land and common ownership on the business entity. In the future, say if there was an issue either with the ABCC or the town where there was a violation and there were penalties imposed, for instance, a one-day liquor license suspension happened in one hotel, would you expect that one-day suspension to affect both hotels, or would there be a split?
Great question. I would expect that we would do whatever however the board wanted to handle that. So legally, the licensed premises, of course, will now consist of these two hotels. I can tell you that in other jurisdictions, there have been cases where the board has made a decision for a whole host of reasons. You know, of course, it depends on the nature of the violation, but for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is, you know, the financial impact on jobs and all of that, that it would impact the one building. Other jurisdictions, just in a straight in-holders license, I have had some jurisdictions say there's no food and beverage or alcohol service, and others say you can continue food and beverage, but the alcohol service is suspended. So it really is up to the board as to how that is addressed. So our expectation is that if there is a violation, which there shouldn't be because we card everybody, even if you're 95 years old. I was reminded of that again before we walked into this hearing today, but if there were a violation, our expectation would be that we would come to the board, we would explain whatever the circumstances would be, and that the board would, in its discretion, determine what the best sanction would be.
Thank you.
So I think to clarify that, they're asking for one license to cover two entities. Regardless of which entity is in violation, we're suspending the license.
That's my point.
Yeah, which would cover both entities.
Yeah.
So,
It would certainly be, from a record standpoint, the violation would, of course, be on the record for the license, which is one single license. How you would choose to handle suspensions or sanctions or any of that would be in your discretion.
Understood.
and the license manager is going to cover both.
That's correct. So, Mr. Williams, who is currently on the license as the manager of record on the liquor license, would continue to be on and would be overseeing both sites. They, of course, are very close to each other. That being said, we have a whole management team, not the least of which is Scott, who is currently on the license at the Hilton Garden Inn and would continue to be part of that team. But there are a lot of faces that I know the town is familiar with. These guys are in here and want to make sure that they do it right. So as far as the license itself goes, however, Mr. Williams would continue to stay on.
Any more questions from the board? Being this is a public hearing, is there anybody in the audience that has any comments or concerns? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can I have a,
Move to approve the application for the alteration of the premises and change application.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck with the opening.
Appreciate it.
It is funny how it did come full circle, though, isn't it?
I went back and I looked and said, I'm pretty sure that but I forgot about the conversation, all the business that's been before the board since then, so it's better.
Still shooting for November 1, is that the goal?
November
point?
1, November 2 at the latest.
All right. He will say a few novenas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Have a
Good luck.
good
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 7:45. Oh, see, we're running late now. Well done, Jim.
One question. It's gonna go downhill from there.
Economic Development Committee, Lorraine Brew, Paige Duncan, Kevin Weinfield, and Barnett Overroot. Discussion vote on Kevin Weinfield and Barry Overroot becoming ex officio members of Economic Development Committee.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us. So we're
Welcome.
back in front of you again. Over the summer, we met once a month, July, August, went back to our regular schedule in September. And so now we are at a point where, based on all of the discussions that we've had, are ready to look at some more in-depth discussion on rezoning proposals for Route 1.
And Route 1,
Yeah.
downtown,
Downtown.
all the things that we've been, it seems like we keep talking about it, but we've actually been a very active board, and as you could see, the last time we were here, we were adding John Eva of Schneider Electric. He's been to all our meetings since, and now, given the zoning that we're working on, and Kevin being the planning board chairman and Barney being the ZBA chairman, they both deal with the zoning bylaw quite a bit, so we felt it important to include them in the fold early on, so that we're not coming up with our zoning and then starting back with planning. So they've agreed to come on as ex officio to just serve as another resource to this very active committee. And just as an update, we are poised to begin with our DLTA grant. I know we've been talking about it, but it took forever to get the funding, and we've been working really hard on the scope, and Bill has to finalize it because we've really been working closely with MAPC to ensure that it's not just a boilerplate, and we're actually modifying on the fly. As we've been talking to Mass Development and other groups, we've been learning more about how to best leverage the downtown, say the fire station, and how to position ourselves best, and how to make sure we involve the community. So I think what you'll see is our DLTA grant now is going to have a little bit more of that outreach, because we're trying to build some community for the downtown and get some folks involved. We want a business organization, but we know we need the residents involved. So stay tuned. That's a little plug. I'll get back to Lorraine, but I wanted to let you know what we've been doing. And well, it seems like we're just talking about it. We are actually planning in motion at the EDC.
So basically, we're here to ask for your approval to add both Barney and Kevin to our committee.
In ex officio capacity, right?
Ex officio capacity brings us a wealth of expertise, obviously, that we need at this point in time, and looking forward to having them work closely with the committee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, when the committee discussed this idea initially, I thought it was a great idea because it really keeps the connection between all the key boards in terms of any kind of major changes. So it keeps everybody well informed, because obviously the two gentlemen that are sitting here are important committee members who have a lot of understanding of existing situations in town, and also can help advise the committee as to what is something that really can happen, or what kind of changes are really needed to make things happen. So it's really key to have their input. I respect their opinions tremendously, because I think they have a lot of help. They offer a lot to the committee discussions. So I fully endorse their efforts and fully recommend it to the board as well.
Any questions from the board?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Two great people.
Yeah, and this is, in addition, isn't Mike Stanton also on your board? So the water and
Yes.
sewer component.
That's right.
So now you get the three major.
Now it's full circle, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And Dave, of course, sits on the committee as
Yeah,
well.
good idea.
So-
No further questions, can I have a motion?
Yeah, move to accept Kevin Weinfeld from the Planning Board and Barnett Overroot from the Zoning Board as ex officio members of the Economic Development Committee.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
You want to go on to the
10 minutes to 8. Economic Development Committee, Lorraine Rue, Paige Duncan, discussion vote to approve funds for field survey of former fire station and former funeral home downtown.
So, we had been before the board a couple of months back with this request, and, after discussion, pursued getting information prepared on a downtown sewer evaluation plan. So that is actually ready for study now. And because we were already here at the table, we thought we would bring up the question if the board would reconsider our request at this time. It's really a tool that we need to have in terms of our ability to go forward with a yield study on the property. So the cost is $7,500, and we just thought timing-wise that this would be a good time to request that reconsideration again.
Mr. Chairman, on the sewer study that's been done by Beta Engineering, I literally saw that the report literally came back this week. So I'm actually having my first meeting with the town engineer and the DPW director tomorrow morning on this report. I want to go through them and then we'll make some recommendations to you, hopefully by your next meeting. So it is in-house. The study's been done. It's actually the scope of the study is greater than I thought it was initially. So they've actually more or less come up with a master plan to a degree of that entire side of the town as to how, on the side of the common, as to how that can be done. It would have to be done in phases, but and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow is how that phase will be broken out and what would make sense to do initially. But given the fact that this is something that timing-wise would make sense, so we can continue on with the process while this is being done, again, I would hope the board would consider approving this.
Could you explain what a yield study is, or is that what Bill just mentioned?
A yield study is probably David knows better than anybody here. So
Yeah.
you want to speak to that? Mr.
So
Chairman?
basically, you're going to take the actual square footage of the building and determine what you can actually put on that parcel while still maintaining the existing zoning regulations, taking all that into account, taking whether 3 stories or 4 stories, if it's mixed use, if it's apartments, how many apartments can you fit within that square footage. It'll take into account parking spaces available, what's needed. So it really gives us a clear picture, especially if you go for an RFP. You know what can physically go on that site.
And the $7,500 that you're asking for is to do the actual surveying, so that's part of the information that you need.
It's the base plan, basically, to
Correct.
start out doing it. It's the first step. And as mentioned previously, when we were auctioning the property, the developer was going to do it. At this point, it looks like the town's going to have to play a more active role to leverage the property, so we'd like to know what we can put out there, and, the next step will be to start laying out possible layouts for the property, coming up with the constraints. I have a feeling it's going to be parking. I mean, that's typically what it is, but to back into, the number of units or the square footage based on the number of parking spaces that can be accommodated while respecting all the zoning requirements.
And the parking design, you can't even
Right.
design it until you know what you
Exactly.
have for square footage.
Right.
And in a parking layout, Jim probably knows it too, like a foot or two makes a big difference, especially on a narrow lot. I mean, when you're trying to do aisles and what, so it's just something we feel we need to do the next step.
Going back to the June 14th meeting, I have no problem spending $7,500, but at that meeting, we were going to table it until we had a joint meeting with the water and sewer, which we haven't had yet. We have no idea sewer cost. It's on the town warrant as a hold. So there's still a lot of questions up in the air.
Right, so let me try and address that for you. First of all, the DPW had agreed to go forward, and I believe it was with the backing and support of the Water and Sewer Commission, based upon the discussion that occurred at this table, about getting the plan design, the plans done, because it was really an important thing for us to, we can't really do anything until we understand what the needs are, what the infrastructure costs are gonna be. The only reason we put that on the warrant is to, at least to have a discussion. We don't know how we're gonna proceed with that at this point, but we didn't want to miss the window either if we didn't have the discussion now. So tomorrow, it will be I'll have a better understanding, because I really would like to have the consultant come in, and certainly if it means that we have to have a joint meeting at that point, now we have something to really talk about, because
We were
we have a
supposed to
plan.
have one right after the June 14th meeting, I believe. Chairman said ASAP. So
I
that was June 14th.
I think that was to try and help expedite the process of getting the plan
Developed.
formalized and, developed. So that happened as a result of the discussion that was
Right.
had at this meeting, and, additional discussion we had at Economic Development Committee. They moved forward, and so now we do,
Right.
they have a plan from the consultant now, which is what Bill is saying he's about
Right.
to start the
They heard
analysis.
the message loud and clear, based on the discussion that you had, that they said, so it's clear that what we need is a plan.
Right.
And we can't do anything until we have the plan. So that's what they've done. So that's the reason there wasn't really a lot we could talk about until a plan could be developed.
Right.
So now I think that, perhaps you want to have the conversation now. I think that's fine too.
Well, didn't Roger come before us with a map of the town hall?
Yes.
Of the downtown
Right.
area?
That was the initial
But-
stage of that,
But
yeah.
at that point, the financial component hadn't been figured out
Right.
yet. They were
Right.
working on that.
Yeah, he actually was able to do that within his own budget.
Yeah.
So I think the June 4th, was it June 4th? June
14th.
Was to try and create a timeline and a sense of urgency that,
Right.
we can't keep going we'll get to it when we get to it process. And that's what really kickstarted it.
Right.
But we still have no idea if it's, and again, I'm fine spending the money, but if we can't fund the sewer, what's the sense of spending $7,500?
Well, I think that's the piece that we're gonna have to talk about now, Chris, is the fact that
Where's the number? I mean, we have nothing to look at.
I can't give you a number yet, because I don't know what phase we're looking at, because they could be done as much as 3 phases, and I don't know what that first phase would cost, and that would at least address the town hall, actually the fire station and the funeral home, to get that online. So then the question is, what would it take to do additional pieces? If you're gonna start construction in that, it would cost significantly more, because then you have to upgrade the lift stations and everything else that goes with that. So it's a much bigger number at that point.
And while I think they're related, they're kind of unrelated, because regardless of what we do with the sewer, at this point, we still need to clean up the discrepancies in the meets and bounds to determine exactly what we're sitting
Right.
with.
Right.
And I think that's
Either way.
what this does. It helps us with an RFP, whether we're going to participate in some sort of joint venture, whether we're just going to identify what could be done, send it out, maybe go back to auction, do an RFP. But we just can't sit here and say, I wish,
Right.
I wish, I wish. We have to actively do something to move this forward.
And I think it's important to note that, it's been made abundantly clear to me that there's no funding available within the sewer commission's funding of capacity right now to fund a major downtown construction sewer. So then the question is, okay, if we can isolate what it would take to get the downtown, the two ownership, town-owned facilities under construction and renovated, could we make that part of an RFP to then, include that as part of the overall cost? And see if that could be offset with, the buildings themselves as leverage. So it's part of a strategy, Chris, and I think that the strategy discussion has to occur when certain pieces are done first. And I think we're at a pretty good position to have that conversation now. So I understand your point completely.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what any of the costs are, so.
Right. I wouldn't want to give you a number, because there wasn't a number done for the first phase. It was done for the whole project, which was a very big number. But it's a much bigger, broader perspective, which is something which is not something that we really need to do at this point, in my opinion.
But at least it's the semblance of a plan.
Yes, it is,
of
which is
some
much
sort
better
of
than what we
long-term
have.
strategy
Right.
that you know, we can figure out.
So, my take on it is going back to the previous meeting also, for the downtown to work, sewer is a component, at least in the minds of a lot of people. The fire station versus the fire station with the budding properties. And I appreciate what you're doing, but when you say a yield study, and if it's a few feet off, you can do a yield study on the maps that you have for bulk and dimension. Is it 2 stories, 3 stories, parking underneath, to spend $7,500 plus more money on another RFP, plus the fact that we still have not met with water and sewer, plus at the last meeting, we're talking about which neighborhoods are going to get into it before we can figure out how to get to town meeting. Part of this is a tool, because if we can't work together with water and sewer on this property, you're going to take the $7,500, get to another point, and we're still not going to have any answers. If we just got the study in today.
Yesterday. I saw it for the first time yesterday.
I think the board should look at it and see what the potential is. Is it going to be $1 million, $10 million, free? Who knows? But to keep going on with this thing without an understanding of sewer after so many months and years, I don't want to spend another dime on, unless we had a buyer that said we'll do it. But to spend money on a survey when people can do a yield study without that survey and tell you how many square feet of retail and residential and parking you can get without spending a dime on survey. Again, my frustration is coming through at this meeting, but let's sit with the water and sewer, let's look at that study and see what we're doing with downtown before we spend more money on one piece that we own in the whole downtown. I just don't see how that's going to help us. And you see, $7,500 is a lot of money, and I do mind spending it, because that comes on the heels of money that we've already spent on the auction effort, on the money that we're going to spend on another RFP, and we're not any closer to finding out how we're going to get sewer to the downtown. And if it doesn't come soon, don't put a grinder pump and pump to the clearest manhole.
Well, I don't know if
and forget about downtown.
I don't know if we've established the fact that we're going to spend money on RFP. We actually have people who have actually helped us with, or offering to help us free of charge, to help put that document together, and also for the grant, the DLTA grant. So that could actually help us with that process. I think this is just another piece of the puzzle, Jim. I understand your frustration, and I think we're closer to getting to where you want to be. But I think if we're going to be successful in getting this piece done, and it's been a long time, it's been over 8-9 years now, but we've been talking about moving this ahead. Every incremental step forward is another step closer towards getting this thing resolved. So I
think we're saying the same thing, other than it's a chicken and the egg. I want to find out what the sewer is going to cost, how we're going to get there, when it's going to come, before we spend any more money on a little piece until we know what the big piece is.
Well, see, just to your point, the chicken and egg thing is that if we don't know if we have to agree on collectively what that first piece is going to cost, that first phase
of sewer,
of the sewer, that first phase of the infrastructure construction, if we agree on that, that's one piece on that, and then that will have to be included as part of the overall project cost, or project estimate.
Yeah.
So then the question is, we still have to do the study, the yield study, to get there, to get all that done. I mean, it will be done more accurately, I would say, given the fact it's kind of a small piece together, even collectively to put that together. It's in a unique neighborhood. So having accuracy, I think, is important here in this case. But I think it's just another step forward, and that's just my perspective. I know you don't share that, but I'm just offering that as my thoughts on it.
I think the majority of the cost is in the meets and bounds, and actually setting the lot limits, because there was a significant discrepancy between the assessor's map and in the title. So I think we need to clarify that.
Yeah, I think it's important to get that property ready to be sold or whatever. I mean, sewer is a component, but I think it's more important to find out what we have, what we can do with it. That's the first step, and then see if we can sell it or whatever, but I think it's important to get the,
I can tell you what we have. We have a fire station, and we have a building behind it, and we've got 5 selectmen that couldn't agree what to do with it when we had a buyer, and it's going to go back to a process. But again, no process is going to go forward until we find out how we're going to get sewer to it. So the deed and the meets and bounds, which is you go first from before any assessor's map, I think is plenty of information to do a yield study on, to tell you how many floors you can get on it and how many parking spaces. If it's off by 2 feet or 3 feet, so be it. But the big picture is what can we do there? How are we going to get sewer to it? And then once we're all comfortable with that, then you spend the $7,500, figure out exactly where the property lines is, and adjust it later. But we just keep putting money and effort into this town hall without the bigger picture being, and it's creeping forward. A year ago we had a meeting and everyone's going to get together, and it just is not happening.
but you're going to have to spend money to figure out the meets and bounds anyway.
Exactly.
So why don't we give the authority to spend the money to establish the meet and bounds?
We could have sold it before, and then the buyer does the effort on that as well. The survey cost can be spent by the buyer rather than the seller.
I think that we're taking a different, we've tried a couple tacks and so far it hasn't worked, and I think we're all committed to trying as many tacks as necessary to make this work. I think the more information we have about the site will make it more marketable for people to understand and for developers to look at. So if more information can be obtained, I don't think that's not a devalued type of expenditure. I mean, I think it's really important to the overall perspective. But listen, Jim, I share the same frustration you do. I love to see the thing built tomorrow. Honestly,
if we could build it tomorrow and sell it tomorrow,
if I could wave that wand out there,
I'd spend the $7,500 myself to get it done. But
Yeah.
we're going to spend this money, and it's going to sit there until things that are out of our control come together. And that's what I'm frustrated with.
You don't know if it's just going to sit there. Doing this might be the thing.
The next step.
The step that will allow a developer to come in and go, okay, I have all the information. I'm willing to do something. Then you start saying, okay, what are you willing to do? It starts it. And I think
We've been down that road, though. It didn't work. We had a developer that came in that was willing to buy it. And I'm not going to go backwards, but we had that exact same scenario, and we couldn't decide what to do with the building. We didn't like what that developer wanted, but we didn't have Plan B. And I'm saying before we can do Plan B, I think we need to figure out the sewer in the bigger picture before we spend any more money on that. And we're talking about tweaking a property line, but you can tell what can go there without spending $7,500. It's not a big argument point, but I can't support spending money on this without the other pieces coming to the table first.
Can you clarify the yield study and what that actually, what would be the producible
Benefit
What would be the producible document that we'll have from that?
Well, traditionally, it would be a plan, that would show schematically, at least generally, it would have to work out the parking layout, and it'd have to be real world to a degree. I mean, it's obviously not going to be down to a foot or two, but it has to be real, and you have to have the real measurements to support it. But the bottom line is to figure out what the use is. We've been kind of working under the assumption of what the desired use out there would be some sort of restaurant or retail on the first floor, maybe about 2,500 square feet, and then the remaining to be used as residential. The question is how many units? And that's something that the community leaders, planning board, actually probably planning board in a way because it's a special permit. I've heard as many as 30 units could be jammed in there, but when I say jammed, I mean jammed. So I think that was an extreme. I've heard as few as, 3 to 6. So it's basically trying to figure out where the number is. I've also been told that the value in this property is going to be through the residential units. Unfortunately, retail and a restaurant is just not something you can bank on, literally. So they look to the revenue from the residential.
Revenue, right.
Yes, and then anything they get from the downstairs obviously would be a bonus. So basically, we're looking to come up with an understanding of the units, and I think even taking a little further in order to be sensitive community characters, understanding what that looks like. If you can get 30 in there and it's a 4-foot tall, big brick thing, I don't think anybody suggests that for this part of town. So it's also getting a bit of an understanding of what the community wants to see out there, and maybe getting a visual perception of that. So it's a process.
So Paige, everything that you said, whether it's 3 units or 30 units or brick or whatever, is completely independent of the survey, because it's a schematic design, and you never do survey to meets and bounds exact when you're doing a schematic design.
I understand that, but we've
So-
also been told that the footprint is so tight, and I mean, I guess you're disagreeing, but just the parking, if you're trying to get 2 aisles of parking with an aisle width, I mean, we're coming, sometimes, the board's asked to waive from, a 24-foot wide aisle, and so it's really, you're right, you can come up with this is about it, but when we're talking about number of units, and I don't see us up in the 20s, I see the number lower. There's just a gut instinct. I have no inside knowledge on that, but my thought is it'll be lower, so that obviously reduces the profitability. So if we start saying, we could do this, and we can't deliver it, it just changes it. So it's, again, is it the deal breaker? Probably not. We can move forward, and we can have an asterisk next to it and saying, subject to final survey, and it may plus or minus a number of units. We're just trying to get some stuff done and get something that we could start getting people interested in real numbers and show that the community's serious about doing this.
I think we're looking at it as a tool in the same way that we did when we brought forward the liquor licenses. It's just one more piece of the puzzle to bring forward economic development, both downtown and Route 1. So, we as a group, when we're having these discussions, the things that always come up are sewer, parking, and what exactly
can fit on that square
is that piece of property, so that there can be something presentable to bring interest to the parcel. We will have done that piece. We have tried other options, and again, so I think this is an important tool, and timing wise, I think we're very close. We have the information now based on that last discussion. It did spark the movement to get that project done. So I think we're taking steps in the right direction here, and this is just one more piece of the puzzle to take those steps.
I listened with great interest to Chris Steele, who's somewhat of an expert in downtown redevelopment efforts, and the one thing that stuck in my mind during those conversations were that the more information you can have, that you can provide, that takes away some level of uncertainty to a developer, it makes it that much easier for them to step forward and say, okay, I can do this. So I think this is just another step in that process, Jim. I respect your position on this. I understand where you come completely, but I just think we're trying to get closer to that resolution based on maybe a different direction that you prefer, but I think we're all ultimately going to get in the same place.
You have a question?
No.
How far off are the lines that we're talking about? I mean, there's 2. I know we were packaging it as one property, but on our books, they're 2 separate properties.
3,
correct?
actually.
3. So
it was a
each
couple
one
thousand
must-
feet off. Like in the aggregate, we really didn't have a good number, but it's like there's a plus or minus a couple thousand square feet of
So is it
area.
at
and
the fire station end or the funeral?
we don't
home
even
end?
really know.
We don't know.
We don't.
It's hard to know where
They're
the
all
property
off a
lines
little. They're all off, and obviously working off assessors is crazy, so we don't even try to do that. But we just know it's off enough. And I mean, I've actually tried to work with the numbers we have, and I can, but I'm not a yield plan specialist. I've learned that. So it's just we've been told that information would be helpful.
Any further questions? Make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, move to accept
to approve.
Move to approve expenditure of $7,500 for a proper survey of the firehouse and funeral home property.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? 3-2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's 8:14, Conservation Commission, Bob Bodie. Discussion vote on 120 Spring Street sale. It's continued from 9/20/2016. So
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this item was before you at your meeting in September. And at that time, the board had seen it really for the first time, so we wanted to give you additional time. And I know that some of you have spoken directly with staff members to get further information about this particular property, which I appreciate you doing that. So I guess the question then comes back to what's the board's pleasure with respect to the sale of this property. If you have any further questions, we can certainly talk about them now.
All right, I'll open up questions from the board regarding the sale.
Yeah, so to go backwards a little bit, so you're right, at the first meeting, there wasn't any information on the 120 Spring Street, but there was information on the other parcel behind the dump that the town owns. So I spent some time with our conservation agent and then talked to one of the neighbors that had contacted me after the meeting, and I actually did a site walk to look at 120 Spring Street. So the only thing that was in the package this week was just a map of the land, but there was no backup. So if it's okay with the chairman, just 5 minutes to give you my perspective of some of the history. So I got a box load of information from the town and also from one of the abutters that grew up in the area. So and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but very briefly, this went back to 1980, this parcel. And when it was said at the last meeting that the conservation is not in the business of real estate and wanted to sell it, I took it at face value that it's a house and just sell it and pocket, put the money into the to general fund, provided that we can find equal land someplace else behind the dump. So the history of this site is the land, it's a sizable amount of land at the end of Spring Street, just before you get into Mansfield, was donated to the town in 1980. And it was donated with two provisions, and it was donated with a house on it. So the house was built in pre-1777, and it was a very historic house of significant history. So the two pieces that went with the donation to the town was it had to go to the Historic Commission, and if the Historic Commission doesn't want it, then it would revert to the Conservation Commission. So the Historic Commission, or the town, took it on behalf of the Historic Commission and ran with it. The building, even though it was historic and the state said it was significant enough to put on the register, the Historic Commission didn't have the wherewithal to put the money into it to fix it, so it was in disrepair. They couldn't find somebody to come in to live there and fix it up, so it went into further disrepair. Then they petitioned the town through town meeting to transfer it from the Historic Commission to the Conservation Commission. So that was in the early 80s, mid-80s. Conservation Commission got somebody to go in there to restore it. But what happened was it was restored. It wasn't restored, it was rebuilt. It was lifted up, new foundation, and the house was pretty much rebuilt to the point where the state said there's nothing left historically on this. It was a shame. And the Foxborough Conservation Commission sent a letter to the Conservation saying they have no interest because there's nothing historic on it whatsoever. So this went on. The interesting thing is, prior to 1980, the state constitution changes. It was Article 97 that we mentioned that was put into effect to preserve open space for the enjoyment of everybody, open space, land, water, all that stuff. So now we have a building on Article 97 land because when the town transferred it to the Conservation Commission, it became Article 97. So we've got somebody living in the property as a private residence, which is off limits to the public, which is supposed to be the purchase under 97 was supposed to be for the benefit. So the dynamics didn't quite work. And then there was a lot of money spent on attorneys and bad press and articles, and it just went back and forth. So this person left when the new town manager came in and basically said the deal's going to change. We're going to put it under fair market value. So for whatever reason, the person living in there decided not to stay anymore and took the kitchen sink and then some and Conservation reinvested in the property to have somebody else living in it, which ran for a while, and I think it was like $1,500 a month going into the general fund. And then at some point, the town made the decision that we're not in the real estate business, didn't renew the lease maybe. It went to month to month.
They decided to leave on their own.
Because it was month to month rather than a
I
lease?
believe so, yeah. It was because at that point, there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not we want to stay in that business
Yeah.
altogether, and whether it made sense. And plus, the house itself needed quite a bit of work.
Yeah.
And the question then became, okay, should we spend significant dollars to do that, or should we just
Sell the
it and move
property.
on? Sell it
Yep.
and move on.
Okay. So now it's vacant, not making any money, and as vacant buildings will do, it'll get in disrepair until it's sold. So in comes Article 97. What do you do with town-owned property that's under conservation? You could break it away and sell it, but you need to find an equal portion. So now we look at the land that the town already owns behind the dump that's got vernal pools and wetlands, and that was what was told to us that was going to be
It could be
even
swapped.
swap.
Yeah, swapped.
And
So-
threatened species.
And, yeah, so if the town
Two
can...
threatened species.
Two threatened species?
Yes.
Yep. So...
State-listed
Yep.
species.
So take that land and put it on a 97 and then sell this 60,000 square foot, which already went through the zoning board back in 89 or 98 to sell it. Putting all this together, there's a couple things that, if the Conservation Commission wants to get out of the real estate business, and I agree, it's difficult, especially when the money comes in from the rent, goes into the general fund, and Bob, I've seen you ask for money for siding and windows, and the town says no. So how do you expect to maintain a building if the town doesn't give you the money that comes in for the rent? It's a broken system. And I read all your notes about how that was going to be fixed, and there was going to be an account set up so the money could go to the conservation it just never happened. So we're in the position where we are in. What bothers me about this is you've got land that the town owns that if we wanted to protect it, we don't need to go to Article 97 behind the dump. It's got wetlands, it's got if we say no, we don't need the state umbrella to say, good, we're going to enforce that. We can do it ourselves. We've got a situation where someone donated land and looking at your criteria when you look at selling land or taking conservation land and giving it back or selling it. You look at different criteria, and in it talks about the benefit of open space, that there's a value to that versus $1, and that's why I think conservation left the Town Managers Act, because the different goals and objectives. But more importantly, it talks about if somebody donates land and then the town turns around and sells that land, what does that do for the next person in the whole feeling that if I donate land, it's going to stay in conservation or historic. Good luck for the next person, because I wouldn't donate land under those if you guys are going to sell it. So in this, there's a lot of information here, but none of this was in the pack, and a lot of times we get stuff that is sterile. There's a rich history to this, and saying we're going to sell it because we're not in the real estate business, I think was a little bit of a collective injustice to the history of this parcel and what the importance of open space is and how it came to be. So my recommendation is, if you want to stay out of the real estate business, we offer the house to somebody for $1, they can move it and knock it down, whatever, but put it back to the open space in conservation, because there is a value to that, and then work with the town not to develop the vernal pools and the endangered species behind the dump, which is landlocked, and it's going to be very difficult to develop anyways. So it's kind of like a carrot. If we can sell this, you guys can get that, but good luck developing that anyways, because it's swampland for the most part. So,
well, I just make one adjustment to a couple things. First of all, the Conservation Commission, this is the first Conservation Commission I've seen anywhere that's actually been out renting properties because it was on conservation land. So it's really unusual to see that happen. So with respect to trying to get out of the business, that's the right thing to do, because that's what they don't normally. They're the caretakers of the caretakers of open space, and I think that's really their fundamental goal. Second of which, the only reason, and I think we've talked about this, the only real reason why we wanted to go with the Article 97 designation of the previous land was because the law or the policy, the environmental policy, it's not even law, it's actually environmental policy.
No, that's a law.
It's, but Article 97 is environment, the environmental policy says that you have to swap land for land.
It's a law in 79. It was an amendment to the Massachusetts Constitution that says the policies, the entity that runs that makes a policy sets a policy based on the law.
Yes, right.
So the policy says, and there's 3 or 4 criteria. They don't take it lightly. To get to that point, you need a majority vote by the commission.
Correct.
You need a 2/3 by town meeting, and this entity that runs the Article 97 has to say yes too.
EOEA, I guess it is.
It's not an easy process, and it's going to take a long time to do it, and it's going to take attorney fees and town meeting. So all of that, plus with all the history, that's why I'm saying it's just easier to cut the losses, put it back to open space.
Yeah, I was going to finish my point. Finish my point was the fact that the only reason we wanted to go in that direction was because if we had to come up with a swap of land, this land was available, and nobody objected to it becoming conservation land. So I think that it really made sense to go in that direction. At the end of the day, if we want to keep the land in conservation perpetuity, just tear down the house. Take the house out.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to say you're doing the wrong thing by going Article 97 says it needs to be open space, but if you don't want it and you want to switch it, this is the vehicle to do it. So you're doing exactly what the policy says. Right. But what I didn't mention also, if you go to that house, you're 30 to 35 feet away from a perennial stream that has buffer. I mean, you have a 25-foot no disturb buffer outside of that. So you're in an area that you shouldn't be on today's standards. Plus, it's got a septic system. Plus, it's in a water resource zone. Plus, it's the only parcel in that area that's abutting Mansfield. So you're giving away a lot to a private residence. And I think what kind of stuck in my mind was what we're doing with the Lane property.
Yeah.
Town couldn't, almost the same scenario. We were not in the real estate business. We decided to do a collective burn on the 2 houses if that was ever sold, that entrance to 80 acres is gone forever because you don't buy it back. Even though there's upland associated with this house, this is a big chunk of frontage that you need to access to the back, that it's going to be a tight squeeze to get by. And my gut feeling is when that land is sold to the house, it's going to be knocked down anyways, and there's going to be a bigger house there. And then you've got to deal with going by a residence to get to, I mean, hundreds of acres that the conservation owns. So, I'm not speaking. I talked to Chairman about this. I didn't want to surprise you guys, but I just see there's a no-win on this. Even if you sell the house, the cost and the aggravation and time to get through town meeting, get through the abutters, get through Article 97 for something that is just no big benefit.
I just wanted to interject, and I don't disagree with you, Jim. I think that that's a good way, and we really just want to work with the town to get this situation resolved, because we don't want to have a house sitting there with no tenant in it.
Correct.
Because we've been there before, and the houses, as you say, they just deteriorate over time. We went down this path because the property had already been subdivided previously. And so in a former town meeting, they had already agreed to sell the property. So there was a piece of that puzzle that had already been done. So
it was done, but it wasn't to sell it. It was to sell or lease it. Because I think that's because of the Article 97. You can't live in it on public property.
From the Conservation Commission's view, this was a way of getting out of the real estate business. And we didn't feel, maybe we should have come to the town and said, just knock it down and make it open space.
In fairness, I talked to them. I talked to the Conservation Commission actively about this is the option that we talked about, and we said was probably made the most sense. I don't think we really fully vetted the idea of just knocking it down. I mean, but you've raised some valid points. But we were working off the document that occurred back in 1998, 97.
Yeah, because they had started the process to sell
at that point to try and sell the property.
So if the plan was to knock down the house, restore it to natural state,
and
maybe there was a significant history there, and maybe make something there that there's a marker for that area of the town that doesn't
Yeah.
really have access to open space like that,
Yeah.
to give recognition of the family that was there and the history and the, Jack Othelette wrote it in the
Yeah.
80s. There's a long history from that house.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I
We were
think it's
just
a
trying to
great
get out of the
idea.
real estate business.
You know?
That's a much better proposal.
Yeah, I like the fact that I went up there and I walked that site, and, that marsh is pretty spectacular. That's right in there, and, that house really kills it. It's sitting right up on top of that hill.
yeah.
So,
Well, especially where, like you said, the house no longer has any historical value.
I think it has one beam left from the
The original
original,
house.
and it's crooked.
Yeah. So, I mean, your goal is to get out of the real estate business?
It can
Our goal
knock
is
it
to
down
put it back to natural
Burn
state.
it, let's burn it and have it open space.
Yeah,
No,
have
no,
the
no,
fire
You can't burn it,
department
because it's
go
too
for
close
it.
to another property,
Oh.
so it would be too close to do that. So, but we could demo it.
Or
might come down Sunday.
Huh? Yeah, that's true. A tree could fall on it on Sunday, yeah.
I mean, in the past, when they restored it, they lifted it up, put a you could
Yep.
lift it up and move it. If somebody wants it
Conceivably,
for
yeah.
$1, all the, the love for them.
I think
Obviously,
if
it's-
anyone went up to the second floor, they would
Yeah.
kind of nix that idea.
Mm.
It's- You would have trouble walking around up there.
Actually-
Yeah.
I mean, I'm shorter, I can walk, but you wouldn't.
Wouldn't do it, yeah.
The building commissioner actually and I talked about this earlier today, about this very
Oh.
property. He mentioned to me, he said, it's actually two houses put together, and they just never matched them up properly, so they actually, there's a tilt to it. And it drives facilities manager crazy, because he tries to fix things and nothing's plumb. So it's really frustrating.
So if the Conservation Commission decides to go on the route of tearing down the building, what's the process in that? I mean, you'd have to go before the Historical Commission to get a, don't you have to get a
Historical has
permit?
They've
no
stepped away from it
concern
now.
in it. They've
Walked away from it.
They walked
they've
away
washed
from
their
it.
hands
No,
of
but
it.
any time you take down, raise a house, if it's a certain age,
is-
you have to go through
Yeah.
the,
I think
Okay.
we'd have to go through that process.
right,
Yeah,
Yes.
we'd
so,
go-
Yes.
so
All
that
through
would be the
permits.
only thing you'd
Yes.
have
Yeah.
to do? Do you have to check with?
Whatever the permits are to, to knock a building down, we've had to go through it before.
Right, so but the state wouldn't be involved in any way?
No.
There's no obligation to
No.
check with the state or anything?
No.
So it would probably just be the,
I think
It was
it's
the
preferred,
state-
it'd be preferred by the state to see it back to natural state.
It was actually the state SHPO office that said this house has no historic value. So any type of coordination that we would do would be with our local town offices. So
sounds like a plan.
I am very interested in that property behind the dump, though.
Well, we
So
talked about that,
if you
too.
could lead us in the right direction to make sure that that property is protected, that,
Well,
we would really appreciate that. I mean,
Yeah.
It's town
there-
property, so
Yeah,
we.
but the feeling is that some other town departments might want to expand some solar panels or something like that, and
You can never
We've
say
not,
never.
we've not had any discussion about
Yeah,
that,
okay.
just to be clear about that.
Yeah.
it's just a protection.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of wetlands out there, and the wetlands, that property is contiguous with some other conservation lands, and not directly contiguous, maybe in some future scheme it could be, but the water courses that run through the property run into another conservation land. That's why it's so important for the wildlife, because there's wildlife corridors through here.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and the members of the commission, I think if anything was proposed there would have to be significant discussion with you all to achieve that. So at that point in time, I can't imagine, based upon where I sit and where I'm sure the board sits on this and your board, that we would do anything significant on that property.
Thank you.
Well, just one question, so I don't want you leave and say we're going to knock down the house. Do you have any funds in your budget
Well,
for
there
this?
is
or-
funding available, actually.
Okay, but
There is-
as you've noted,
Right.
the town has received rental income from us from our properties for many years, and we haven't seen any of it. So I would think there should be something in that.
Well, there is, we have been using some of that money for
Oh, I realize
for the property, for the maintenance, for the
Sure.
maintenance.
Yeah.
So I just to be clear about that, we have been using it to maintain that property.
Yeah.
But there is $17,000, $16,500, and it was authorized by a special town meeting for that property.
For that
itself.
property?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can use
So we can actually utilize that for that. And I can't imagine it's gonna cost us all that amount to take it down.
So,
Don't you have to dig up the septic system and you know, get
I
rid
don't know
of
if
the
you need to
foundation?
do that, if you need to
Fill
do
it
that.
in.
You
need
can
to
crush
fill
it and leave it there.
Fill it in, yeah. We can just fill it in.
Okay.
And what would be the mechanism for having somebody buy it and take it away? I mean, what do you have to do for that?
Suppose we could offer it up, or
Is that an ad in the
just
paper?
advertise it and do an RFP and say. it's
You mean, you're
available,
saying
so
if somebody wants the house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably RFP, put it in the
RFP,
newspaper
yeah,
and
the newspaper.
let it run
Yeah,
for a couple months.
That's what you would do?
Yeah,
Okay.
but if it's as odd as you're saying, you might go with the
take a
exercise of people looking at it and walking away, because it's not cheap. You'd have to own the land, and it's not cheap to move a house,
Yeah,
and you know, but who knows?
yeah, my inclination is that we're probably better to take it down.
Yeah.
That's my inclination, without even exploring it that much. Because if the house was truly worthy of maintaining, I think we would have looked at it more seriously. But it would have cost us close to $67,000 just to repair it, to get it up to where it should be. That's a lot of investment to do that.
so how do you want us to fashion a
So
motion?
I think that the motion would be, at this point, is to direct the town manager to work with the Conservation Commission and town departments to come up with a plan to demolish the property, to remove the property from the existing site and keep it, maintain it as conservation land.
Okay. And just one, not to keep going on, but there was one abutter that lived across the street that grew up there, has a wealth of information. So if there's any opportunity to put some type of a placard or a little sitting park or something, Wayne Johnson would be the person
Similar to what we
talk
proposed for the other one on South Street.
Yeah, correct.
Like a mini park type of thing.
All right. So we'll move to send back to town manager and the committee to look into the process of demolishing the building
Moving
and
the house.
keeping it as conservation land,
Open space.
open space.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Great, thank you.
Congratulations, you're out of the real estate business. Mission accomplished, right?
More than you know.
Oh, one more.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Good job on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, don't go anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Discussion vote on acceptance of 27 Lakeview Road property.
So do you want to just explain this to the
Sure.
board? So,
That's a piece of property that they built 2 homes on, and the back area they want to donate to the Conservation Commission. Normally, if somebody wants to donate a piece of land, we look at it, and if it's an isolated piece of land, we say, no, we're not interested, because we don't want little pockets of land. And we have a criteria for accepting land, and I'll just run through parts of it. The property is abutting other permanently protected town-owned land. It contains wetlands. It contains 1 or more potential vernal pools. The land could provide access for hiking, boating, canoeing. It contains historical, I'm not sure what the cultural significance is right now, but it contains significant scenic landscapes, and the land is listed specifically within the current open space and recreation plan. So there's also one abutter to the property that we have started working with to see if we can get access across the back of his property to make it more connecting to other conservation land. So it's not an isolated piece of land just sitting out in the middle of nowhere.
So when you're talking about an easement, it would be a recordable easement?
Well, that's what we're working on. It's because he's concerned about liability, naturally crossing his private property. But we're working, trying to get a legal document there that he is not liable for any accidents or whatever. But as the land sits now, it does abut other conservation and open space.
So the total parcel that we would theoretically be getting is 3.49 acres?
I think
What the
that's
number
it.
is?
That's what it says.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Off the top of my head.
Well, it says 3.49 acres of wetlands.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
all of it is wetlands?
It's it's got some upland area, but it has the vernal pools, and then there's a path that is upland that you can, it has a trail on it at the present time that people use.
About 4 to 5 acres, is it fair?
Surprisingly beautiful.
So having just said the importance of open space and wetlands, I'm going to say the exact opposite to play devil's advocate. Are we taking a parcel off of the tax base that
That's what it sounds like.
would not be normally developable anyways, but there's enough upland and trails to make it
Attractive to
Attractive.
conservation,
Okay.
but not to, it's correct, it's not, nobody could develop it, that's correct. 2 houses, it was a big open lot, but now 2 new homes.
2 big houses are on it? So this is the back parcel
This
of those?
is the back parcel. That goes up to the lake.
So one lot was subdivided into
Yep.
3 parcels.
And there's 2 houses on 3 parcels, so this is a completely
This is a
separate
third
parcel?
parcel.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not the back part of the 2 houses that went up, this isn't an area that you'd break off from those 2 houses, it's already separate?
No.
You can tell that there is the property lines do define it pretty clearly. So this is really provides you more lakefront,
Yes.
Yeah.
lakefront access.
Right.
I mean,
I don't know
this
what
is,
the taxable amount for that would be.
this is just so that the board, and this is the first time you've seen this as well. It's similar to last time. If you want to take another week, 2 weeks to think about it before you act on it tonight, that's perfectly fine too. But if it's something.
Wasn't this given to him last week?
No, it was
Friday.
It was Friday.
Oh, it was in the
This was in
packet, yeah.
Friday's package.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
So-
I'm generally in favor. I think I just have to ask the question, is there a big tax give-up that the town is giving to take this property? I don't see it, but I don't have
I
that.
have
5
no idea what
acres
the
of
taxable value
taxable
would be.
property.
Yeah.
Basically, the person who wants to, or basically donated it to the town, unbeknownst to us, took their one property and they subdivided into 3, so the one house was providing taxes. Now you have 2 big houses providing you with taxes.
Yep.
And this is the leftover that they wanted to preserve and give to the town for perpetuity, because it really is a...
So the question is, what are we giving up in terms of, like, see, a lot of people like to do that because they can take they take the tax liability off the books.
Yes, I understand.
So in this case, we should probably take a closer look at that to make sure what that is and have a good understanding of that before we
It
commit
was
to that.
recently subdivided. I've never even seen what the taxes were.
But it was my understanding that was unbuildable.
It is
It is.
unbuildable.
Yeah.
Because it's wetlands, so. you
Right.
can't-
Right, it's absolutely
Yeah,
unbuildable.
because I was at the planning board meetings when the man came in and Paige, if you can provide any more information. But I remember there was a big discussion about donating
27
land because it was
Lakeview.
unbuildable. So it can't be on the.
I mean, they could have
anyway.
included those in the back portions of those 2 lots,
Yeah.
but these people wanted to preserve it because it was
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean, it would probably have been easier just to
Keep bigger lots.
down the middle and keep
Yeah.
it with those lots, but
And
it's
there-
not
It makes
buildable,
a
and they wanted it
connection.
to be
Yeah.
protected.
So it may be unbuildable, but it's also private, so the public doesn't have access to it, even though it's
At the
wetlands.
present time.
But here it would be
Well, you can kayak
connected.
over to it, you can
Yeah.
canoe it, and
But the uplands and the wetland, the soils, you can't walk on it because it's private. But if the transfer went through, land wouldn't change, but you could walk through it. So basically, you had a public access to it. There's a benefit for that.
Only if the access easement through 25 Lakeview.
Well, there's an interesting path there, and obviously, I think the neighbors had said that they were maintaining it. And so I think that if you could find a way, we're working on a way to get through that to the rest of the property. There's a good chunk of land over in that portion of the world next to the reservoir, or the Nippon, wait a second, the Lakeview Pond. Yeah, Lakeview Pond. That, to my knowledge, doesn't really have any trails. And there are several parcels that we need to add trails to, and that's one of them.
I'd like to see two things, if that easement can work and what the tax hit would be to us. So I would like to maybe table this to our next meeting if we can get those answers. I don't know on the easement end how close you are working out a deal. But if we can't get access to it, there's no sense in us owning it.
You have access to it from the Lakeview Pavilion side.
The pavilion has a trail that goes right down to it.
Has a trail going through it. It's basically, this follows, for the ones that were around long enough ago, the railroad or the trolley track goes right behind there.
Jim was here for that, but the rest of us weren't.
But there's remnants of the trolley track back there, and so it has some historical significance in that factor. So.
Is that the trail? What the path
What
is?
the trail, yeah.
That's where the trolley went?
Yeah.
That's why it's so straight and
up high. Because
all right, got it.
But I guess the question is, if you were a resident, no, aside from the tax, but if you were a resident and you purchased this tomorrow, if we buy this, can a resident have access to this through whatever you're talking about, the Lakeview Pavilion?
Yes.
But isn't that private property through Lakeview Pavilion?
There's public access in there, in the back.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
So a resident can get to this property without going on, without
Private
trespassing?
They could also take a kayak or a canoe, or they could walk on the ice in the winter. You know, it's a good spot if somebody wanted to go over there for a little picnic or something like that. It's just really pretty.
Can we, I'd like to spend a little more time on this so we can come back with a little bit more definition of this. I think it would be helpful to further explanation so everybody's comfortable with this, understand all the questions I just asked tonight.
Sure.
It's not a huge problem to come back the second time on these things. Sometimes I find it to be better sometimes to do that after your first discussion about it, to really answer all the questions. It's my thought.
Yeah, I agree.
Move to table? Or just table it automatically?
Are there any other questions anyone has
Any other-
that you'd like to have?
We may have
filled
more.
in?
They may have more after tonight, but.
All right.
but we
Oh, I
we
got it. All right.
Give us a call,
Sure.
we'll walk you through it.
You know, it would be helpful if you sent us the same map that you sent for Spring Street of the color-coded of what the town owns in that area, because I think that would answer all of our questions
That'd be really
on that.
helpful. That'd be really helpful.
You know, just the
Get that.
GIS toggle on the public parcels
Can be
next to
done.
this.
But we have all the information, we just haven't put it all together yet, so we just need to fill that out.
And just one question, Paige, was there an order of conditions when that subdivision of the two houses were approved by the planning board? Was there anything in the order of conditions or the order of approval, whatever you call it? If there is, could you check it, and if there is something, can you include that information to us? It might be helpful from the planning board's point of view.
Yeah, I know there was, town meeting changed some of the bylaws, so they came in first and then they had to drop it, and then they came back with the bylaw change that the planning board made, so they were able to get in the two houses.
Yep.
So,
Mr. Chairman, just one question. So I noticed this was included in your management report back in 2015. So has there been any action on this since then, or has somebody just approached you recently about this?
No, well, what happened was, they did talk about it back then, and then all of a sudden, a couple months ago, the person who, the developer, wanted to sell the parcels, but was not going to get a building, I don't know, occupancy permit, I believe, until this piece of property went to the commission, because it was, in a way, it was part of the open space for those two parcels. I don't understand all the nuances because it's planning, but And at that point, they said, okay, well, we've transferred it, here's the deed, and I'm like, but the commission never approved of this, and all that sort of thing, and it had been discussed, but there's really no set process for, and I'm frustrated by this, for the
Conveyance of.
donations or even open space parcels to be vetted and approved by the commission and everything else. So
Right.
this was kind of done, I sent them a lot of information because they had requested it, but then they went and did it without talking to us anymore.
I see.
So I was kind of taken aback by this.
Fair enough.
It sounds like, now what I'm hearing, I apologize, I wasn't here for all of this apparently, but it sounds like if this is an open space subdivision, clearly there is a requirement of the planning board.
I think it was a
So
kind
we'll
of
have to look
quasi.
into that. But if it is an open space, then that would be something that chances are the planning board vetted, because they typically would look at the quality and the quantity of open space. So I could find out, you were probably right, there was something, if it was an OS.
It was discussed, and I asked Diana to give me copies of the minutes, and I apologize, I thought I had forwarded them to you, but obviously I didn't. I must have gotten them after this went out.
Okay, it's fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Bill Keegan, special town meeting warrant, review changes, close warrant.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have before you tonight, we gave you, I did it earlier tonight. The latest document that was handed out to you reflects a total of 17 articles, 8 of which are, I believe, land use related. Actually, 9 actually, or 8 are actually land use related. Some we put in as placeholders because we're not completely resolved as to how to finalize them, and so we want to try and get the AdCom to start working on these sooner rather than later, because the date for the meeting is now December 5th. So we want to try and get started on the review process. So it's about 2 months out. So the first 7 articles are zoning-related articles, and that's why Paige is here tonight to kind of get us through those, in case anybody has any questions at this point. The fund stabilization is, and the F is something dealing with, which Randy can speak to.
Maintaining our
reserves.
At 5% of the operating budget.
Which is consistent with our financial policies now. And the FY15 budget adjustment was that for the money for the 16 or 17,000 associated with the 120 Spring Street.
16.5 associated with Spring Street. I'd still recommend we do it because it doesn't cost 16.5. There are other buildings that need to come down too.
Exactly. Right. So we're looking to maybe use some of that to use for South Street, to take that building down and do this, to work on that. So disposition of unclaimed property statute acceptance. That's a new provision under the new statute.
New provision streamlines that process when you have uncashed checks. Currently, it's an over 3-year process. This new statute, which we're encouraged to adopt through the Municipal Modernization Act, it streamlines it to a 1-year process.
That's good news. And the rescind the borrowing authorization, Randy?
We didn't have to borrow everything that town meeting authorized to borrow for the Oak Street water treatment project, so just a housekeeping initiative to take anything that was authorized that's unused off the books.
Great, thank you. As far as the demolition bylaw amendment, can either one of you speak to that issue, or?
To add time to it?
Yes,
That
to
you
add
said.
time. Currently, it's, as Ginny brought up earlier, currently it's a 50-year requirement. Household in 50 years requires demolition permit from Historical Commission, and they're requesting that it be amended to a 75-year age of the home.
And the funded downtown sewer infrastructure, obviously we had a conversation about that earlier, so that's on hold for time being. The downtown Rotary safety improvements, Paige, can you
Yes,
address that?
that's a placeholder. Chances are we wouldn't be ready for anything, but I was asked to put in, we've been working with the county, we got a grant from the county, and we've been looking at ways to, without doing a whole lot of construction, make it more pedestrian friendly downtown. So we've got some concepts, but, and we ran it by Roger Hill. He asked to have it modeled, so we are having it run through a simulation model to make sure it wouldn't make things worse, and then based on that would be whether the planning board wanted to come forward and make some suggestions. So they asked me to put a placeholder in.
Would those improvements do anything to help with the traffic flow?
That's the goal. One of the things that has been noticed is that a lot of the traffic delay is often just because people don't know where the people are going. You know, there's so many free movements. So there's some effort to try to channelize it a little bit so that people would know, you know, if you're waiting, that whether someone's going to go around the rotary or take the left, and trying to create that where you have to sort of declare your intentions a little sooner, and also give pedestrian sort of refuge areas in the middle. You know, some of those walks are long, and but it's also balancing, of course, the plowability of the area. So we're looking at those options. My hunch is we will not be ready for town meeting this year, but I was asked to hold on to it. And we're waiting for that report. The modeling report is due on Thursday, so hopefully it'll be coming.
The next one was the steelworker pay plan. We've got more work to do on that. We're going to have more information for you at your next October 18th meeting. And then the capital budget adjustment, we actually have a fire truck that needs to be replaced. It takes about 18 months to put this into order. And the money for this would come out of our capital expenditure fund for a fire truck.
The ambulance receipts fund, so it'd be self-funding out of ambulance receipts. It would be 18 months if we waited to the May meeting, and this is a recent development with Engine 24, so we'll gain about 8 months by considering it for the special town meeting.
Okay. And then the one license package store, the alcohol license that we didn't do the last time was the issue dealing with a package store all alcohol license, which would help the store that's located in the Bradley's shopping center right now. We had more work to do on that, and so we're gonna continue to try and get that in ready in place for the next meeting as well. So that's something that we said that we committed to try and put that on for this meeting, and so we're trying to follow through on that. Can you just give a brief overview of the zoning issues, Paige?
Sure.
You might want to just come up to the mic for that, please. Thank you.
I don't have a copy of the warrant in front of me, but I have a list of my own.
You want to take this? Yeah, there you go.
And do you want this, the grid too?
No, that would be hard to read.
All right.
Okay, so Article 1, this is merely a typo, or well, somewhat of a typo. When I was looking actually at the fire station auction property when I first started, I just somehow jumped out at me that the base zoning on the overlay map for the Keating property was listed as residential. And yet I was reading Bill Caspara's thing, and it wasn't saying that. So when I checked, the underlying zoning was shown incorrectly on an overlay map. So we didn't change any zoning. It's really just an editorial. And in fact, we issued a corrected map at that time, provided it to the town clerk and the building department, and we've been using it. But this is to formally ensure that we have accurate zoning information on our overlay map. Similarly, Article 2 is another cleanup. I just happened to notice, it's always easy, I'm the new person, so I'm reading a zoning bylaw fresh, and I just picked up this little typo. So it's really just a housekeeping thing to make sure that we're referencing the correct table. And then the next one has to do with site plan, and it's just giving us a little bit more time for the planning board to render their decisions and open their hearings. 15 days is very tight if you don't have a meeting in there, and it could result in a statutory or a constructive approval. So this is just giving us time to do that. And then the word conducted under hearing is unclear. Does that mean open, close? What does that mean? So we're just saying the hearing shall be opened no later than, so then it's clear what the intent is there. Article 4 has to do with commercial campgrounds. This is at the request of the campground and community. They've actually come to the planning board, the zoning board. We've worked with them and vetted a proposed change to the zoning to allow them to have accessory uses that aren't necessarily associated with camping, and that basically they'd like to be able to use a function hall to perhaps have a wedding or something like that, to make their business more of a year-round operation and to allow them to stay viable. Because it's a big family trying to keep it viable, and they want to remain committed to that land. And, we as a community probably want to support them, because we certainly don't want that land coming up for development. So it behooves us all to keep that as a campground, I think. Chestnut Pace and Overlay District map, that has to do with something I'm not sure you all are familiar with, although maybe you were from the last time we tried. This has to do with the paint shop and the laundry building land that's right next to the lacrosse field. We've been discussing, there's been a request to look at that land for a proposed assisted living use. So in order to be permitted to do that, we would need to do a few things. One, we'd need to change the zoning to extend the overlay district for Chestnut Pace and Overlay District to include that land. Right now, it's not part of the overlay district. And then the next article, actually it's not here, Article 7, if you skip ahead to Article 7, that's the companion thing. That would be then allowing your board to petition the legislature to remove the use restrictions. Because right now, the paint and the laundry shop land is restricted for residential use only. So, and DCAM is aware of this. They've actually reviewed the article. So this would just allow the opportunity for the town to start engaging this. There would still need to be an RFP, the whole process, everything would have to be done through procurement, but this would pave the way to remove restrictions and put the zoning in place. And then I think the last one for me is Article 6, and actually this is your article in a way, because it's municipal conversion, and it just came up when we were looking at it in December after the auction, that the table that was, section 10.4 was incorrect, and then, again, same thing, does conduct mean open a hearing, close a hearing, what does that mean? And then we also had trouble with the timing. It was around the holidays, and it was difficult, so 30 days just seems to be a little more of a reasonable date to allow boards, in case they have to cancel a meeting. It's just very difficult when you're up against the constructive approvals. So that's actually something we did as a cleanup to make sure that next time you go to do that, you have deadlines that actually work.
So originally, was it like 15 days?
Yes, you can see here under Article 6 where it says strikeout, it says, originally it said the Board of Selectmen shall open a public hearing within 21 days from receipt of an application. And that can be difficult if you have to advertise and all that, and if you don't have a meeting coming up. So we changed it from conduct to open, and then that way there's no question that you have to close it within that time frame, because we weren't even sure what the intent was on that, whether you were expected to open and close it in one night, render a decision and get it filed, or you'd run the risk of being constructively approved. Just trying to clarify that.
All right. So that's what we got right now. Does anybody, I know that there was a question, there may have been a question as whether or not somebody might be coming forward with something else. We haven't heard anything else unless anybody's got anything that we know of. So at this point, the board could vote to close the warrant, and then we can start proceeding with the process of reviewing the warrant. We can always amend the pieces out of it, that if we don't decide not to go forward with it. We can always do that as well.
Well, I think the intent was to keep it kind of limited anyway.
Right.
What's the board's desire? I mean, does anybody have any objection to closing it? Is it too early? Can we?
That would simply mean you couldn't take any more articles,
Right.
in, but you can always take articles out, but you couldn't put more into it. And if worse comes to worse, you always have the ability to reopen it if you had to, but we try not to do that only because it gets really messy if we try to do that. So
Yeah, I say we vote to close it.
Move to close.
Second?
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
All right, thank you. We'll get to work on this right away, and then we'll, well, just so everybody's aware, we will be sharing this information with the AdCom tomorrow night. They have their first meeting tomorrow night, so we only want to get them started and get moving on some of those things. And we'll share the same information that we shared with you tonight about where we are with certain articles.
Town council took a first pass at the language already.
So we're that far ahead of the process in that regard. Okay? That's all I have on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paige.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks, Randy. We're good.
Just a couple things for me. Doc, happy birthday.
Birthday, Doc. Happy birthday, Doc.
Thank you.
Figured it's embarrassing
They all
you a little bit.
It's because you surprised Patty.
Last Friday ended an era with Chief O'Leary.
It did, actually.
Monday started a new era.
Yeah?
With Chief Baker.
Chief Baker started yesterday morning.
Yeah.
So, Chief O'Leary's retirement party is coming up on the 20th.
October 20th.
So just a reminder to everybody, and, we have tables set aside, so in case everybody's interested in attending, let us know.
Bless you.
It was a very nice little send-off on Friday.
Yeah,
it
was great.
That was neat.
Yeah.
Actually, Chief Baker had that was his Chief Baker's idea, so which
Yeah.
to his credit. So I'm really glad to see that happen, and everybody fully embraced it.
Yeah.
I want to thank the entire department for doing that, and of course thanks to the chief himself for all the years of service that he's given this community. We'd like to do something perhaps in your next meeting.
Oh, yeah, he's not getting off.
He's not getting off easy,
scot-free
that easy, right?
embarrassed.
And so,
He's going to
that's
get
right.
back to us. He's traveling a little bit.
Yeah.
so,
I
can imagine.
Yeah.
He thought it was going to be tonight. I said, no, we got a little time. Don't worry about it. We'll get back to you for the next meeting. So, all right.
Okay. I don't have anybody else on the board have anything? Okay.
All right.
We could do that. I forgot about that. Ginny just reminded me, we are going to do I think it's our 4th or 5th thank you to the veterans. So we're going to take a few collections, so if anyone wants to pass the word, we're going to be handing out thank you letters from the kids and turkeys and football tickets to the New England Patriots. No, not that. The Foxborough High School Foxborough Mansfield football game. So I'll probably get something in the paper tonight for Thursday.
Oops.
With some contact
You're way ahead of
information.
it.
I know.
You must have a committee this year.
Yeah, we have a good committee. All those in favor of being on the committee? No, it's something we look forward to, and I think we had about 70 recipients last year, and hopefully get a little bit more this year. So,
great.
Thanks for reminding me.
The gym usually starts at like the meeting before Thanksgiving. So, proud of you.
Yeah, we're getting there. Getting there.
All right.
You got your first turkey, right?
Yeah, the two that died on Mechanic Street, but we can't bring
There
that
was
up.
some available, by the way, if you like one.
Yeah, that was going to be my joke. The first 50 people that sign up get fresh turkeys. The rest get the Foxborough turkeys.
There you go. All right.
All right, Billy.
Just a couple of things. Again, I just wanted to express my condolences to your Shopper family. I was actually with Mike a couple weeks ago. Doc was there as well, and Mary Beth, and we spent just almost the entire evening with him that night, and it was great to see him. I was so glad to see him back in action, working in his capacity on the committee, on the stadium committee, and just a terrific guy, and a guy who reached out to me almost immediately when I first got here to welcome me, aboard and to make me feel, part of the community. And I really just want to take that opportunity to say thanks to him and his entire family. And my deepest condolences go out to Doris and their children for his loss. So, moving on. I wanted to just mention to you that Brigham Women's and General Healthcare Center at Foxborough is holding a number of different fall health events. Which will be, and one of them is actually quite interesting, occurring this Thursday on youth sports, the benefits and detriments, and it will be held at the Brigham and Women's Mass General Healthcare Center in Foxborough. And it'll talk about the advantages of discussing benefits and detriments of youth sports, single sport specialization versus multi-sport participation, and potential and positive negative effects of supplements. So, a good one for parents that have kids in sports nowadays. They might want to pick up on that. And then also on Tuesday the 25th, and by the way, that's Thursday, October 13th. That's coming up next week. And then Tuesday, October 25th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m., there'll be a flu prevention, all you need to know. Anybody that has any questions about flu this year, I know that there's different. I don't believe they're doing the aerosol spray anymore. I believe it all has to be done by shots. They're not offering that anymore, so anybody who has questions about that, that'd be an opportunity to inquire at that point. I'm very pleased to share with the board tonight that we received a letter from a resident of Mansfield that was addressed to the Foxborough Police Department. It was attention to Chief O'Leary, and it says, on Friday, July 8th, my husband Peter was interviewed by Detective O'Leary in Morrison at Canton High School. It was in regard to a neighbor of my daughter who lives in Foxborough. During the course of the interview, Peter went into cardiac arrest. The detectives immediately began CPR. Canton Fire Department responded and brought Peter to Norwood Hospital. The doctors and nurses told me that 90% of the people that have this type of heart attack do not survive. It was only due to the fact that Detectives O'Leary and Morrison gave Peter CPR that he survived. Peter has since then made a full recovery and has returned to work. I want to extend our full, heartfelt thanks to the detectives for their truly heroes. And it was signed sincerely, Kathy Gandolfo and Peter Gandolfo of 97 Gilbert Street in Mansfield. So thanks for sharing this with us, and congratulations to our officers for doing that great work. I just want to update the board too on a couple things. One is the fact that we have been diligently working on the regional dispatch issue with 3 other towns, and we continue to meet on a regular basis, and the meetings are going very, very well. I'm starting to see some elements of social media saying that, you know, we're fully opposed to this before we even see any information. Well, first of all, it's not going to be my decision. It's been asserted that it's going to be my decision as the town manager to do this. It's not going to be my decision. It's going to be the board's decision to do this, and it's an important decision that we all have to face as communities. But we are working on a very detailed presentation, and we've been working on trying to answer a lot of the questions we think people will have. So we welcome the opportunity for people to ask questions and to intervene and to get involved in the process, because the more people are informed on this issue, the more they will understand why we're going in the direction that we're trying to achieve and look at. We're not at a point where we can say it's absolutely a slam dunk, we should do this, but we're getting closer to that, to where we can say this is a good idea, and we think we should get behind it. There's clearly some financial benefits to it. There are a lot of long-term considerations here that we have to look at, because every one of the towns, I just did an assessment of all the equipment needs of all the various towns that are involved in this. Every one of us is facing a significant upgrade in expenditures of equipment over the next several years, which could all be conceivably paid for. A good chunk of it could be paid for by the state if we were to regionalize this effort. It also looks at the issues of better training, better opportunities for our employees to have medical dispatch information, and the E911 money that's coming from the state right now will be drying up, because they're looking to spend the money on regional dispatch centers and not giving it to individual centers, because there's no basis for it. There's just not enough calls to do that. There is on a regional basis, but not on an individual town basis. So it's something that we really have to look at as responsible towns to see if we can continue to maintain this effort. It's really important that people understand that we are like the last area of the country where this is not being done. Everybody across the country has been doing this except for the Northeast, and there are very few exceptions to that throughout the country. So we're trying to get in line with the rest of the world in this regard. So it's really important that we look at this and be open-minded about the whole concept. And I really would hope that people would take the time to really listen to the facts about this before they make up their mind about it, and don't be persuaded by some limited arguments, some limited statements about what this is all about. There's really a lot of information to be shared, and we're going to get to the point we're going to share it with everybody before anybody makes a decision about it.
Are any of the other towns getting the negative?
Well, and certainly everybody has questions about this, Chris. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of negative, I'll be honest with you, but I know that I know there are questions, and I think it's important that people ask questions.
Yeah.
And we want to get as much information out to people so that they can make informed decisions or understand the significance of what we're trying to achieve.
Just one more thing. Just being at that first initial meeting and kind of being caught up by emails, the other meetings just wouldn't work for me. But, I mean, win, lose, or draw, you guys are going about this 100% the right way. You are vetting the heck out of it.
Right.
So I applaud you guys for that.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. And it's really important that people know that. I mean, we're trying really hard to get all the questions answered. We know that this is an important issue for people, and it's a very sensitive issue that people really take seriously, and we want people to know that we're taking it very seriously as well.
Are you at a point where you have a consistent list of questions that people are asking that it may be premature, but, posting on the website frequently asked questions about regional dispatch?
We just had that conversation today because we actually had it at the last meeting, talked about the fact that we should develop an FAQ list, frequently asked questions list of things associated with this, and try and start answering those questions. But I think what we'll do is that we'll make our presentations to each of the towns first. And I saw the draft presentation just, 2 weeks ago. It's terrific. It's really, really well done. It's very well done. So following that, I think we'll have a lot of questions that will emanate from that. And then we'll start the FAQ process. But I think it's an exact point that we discussed, and I think we really want to do that.
What are the other two towns?
The other three towns we're working with Mansfield, Norton, and Easton. So and we all have something aligned with each other in terms of, we work really well together now. So it's been a really good process, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to know the public safety folks in these other towns, and they're all really, really professional people, and they do a nice job.
Bill, Chief O'Leary's been obviously from the beginning and involved in this. At what point, or have you brought in
Chief Baker on this?
I've
discussed it with him. We discussed it with him early on in the process, and that we actually included as part of our review process, our interview process. That we said we're looking at this. What are your thoughts? In fact, I think it was one of the questions we asked. Was a writing assignment. So they've been involved. He's been involved from the beginning, and he fully concurs that this is the way we should be looking at it.
He does.
He does. He agrees. And that was without any prompting at all. He's seen it happen in other places, and it really is a good way to go. So, all right. So that's. I just want to get that out there because I just want folks to understand that we're really taking this very, very seriously, and we're very sensitive to people's concerns about the residents' concerns about it, and we want to make sure we get the right words out. This past week, I was in Kansas City for the ICMA conference. It was a conference of about 3,000 managers from around the world. There were 31 countries represented, including plus the United States.
Wow.
So I had the deep honor of presenting this year. It was at one of the sessions. And I got to tell you, I was a little taken back. And when I went into the session, I figured there'd be, they had these different breakout rooms. And I figured I'd be facing a room of about 50 managers maybe. Well, I walked in the room, there were 300 managers in the session. And it was televised. So I presented and the presentation was about how we worked on the town hall project and got it finally to the approval stage, and it went pretty well. It was fine. I was a little nervous, to be honest with you, but at the end, all the questions came to me, and there were two other presenters, and somebody even called in from around the country. I don't know where the call came from, but they even called in and asked a question about it. So it was really engaging. Nobody left, which was great. They all stayed, and they were really involved in the presentation. I had a lot of questions after the presentation afterwards. So I guess it was a hot topic, and people were really interested in it. So it worked out really well. But it's really interesting to see what's going on around the country, and we're worried. We're all really worried about police officers being targeted these days, and what's going on in the world, and that's a major issue across the country, not just limited to Massachusetts, but across the country, and it's something that we all have to take very, very seriously. The opioid crisis is a national issue, not just a regional issue, and so we're all trying to find ways to get involved in that and try and find ways that we can be more progressive. And I also serve on a national committee for setting policy, for government policy, and we talked about that extensively, about the opioid issue, as well as the cops, the safety of police officers, and how we're dealing with that as a nation. And it's fascinating to hear what's going on around the country. We're actually in a good place compared to some places around the country. So I'm really grateful that we are where we are. But it's a little chilling to see what's going on around the country. So. And last but not least, all eyes are on Hurricane Matthew at this point. It could reach us by Sunday if, based on the current weather reports. At this point, it looks like a Category 1 storm. If it hits us, it would be we'd be on the wet side of it, or the west side of the storm, which would be mostly rain. Probably could use the rain, but I'm not sure we want to get that much rain, but all at once. So that could be a little bit problematic. I encourage people that the residents of the town, that if you're listening tonight, to take precautionary steps. I would, if I were you, just over the next few days, I would take in my lawn furniture, my summer furniture. I haven't taken in already. Anything that's loose and has the potential to become, airborne one way or the other during a high wind scenario, take it out of the yard and store it away in a closed area. Also, check if you have generators. Check them now. Make sure they're running. Top off. Get your gas tanks filled so they have extra gas on hand. Get whatever water you need, just in case you're on a well and you run out of electricity. So those are just precautionary steps we take at this point in time. And then, of course, as the storm gets closer, and if we do become more of a threat area, then certainly pay closer attention to local cable, our Twitter site, our Facebook site, as well as our website. We'll be monitored on a regular basis, and we'll be giving updates as necessary. But again, we're taking a very precautionary approach at this point. We don't know enough about the direction of the storm, but it is hurricane season, so it's a good way to sort of take a first step at protecting ourselves and our property at the same time. That's all I have.
Okay. Mary Beth?
Good. We touched upon our goodbye to Ed O'Leary. The final salute held on Friday, I thought, was just so fitting of his 39-year career. And just want to put a special thank you out to Lieutenant Rich Noonan and Lieutenant John Hannon, who played a big part in organizing that, as well as the transition to the new chief. They're both instrumental in helping us to get Chief Baker comfortable here. He started on Monday. Just Saturday, we participated in the 11th annual Hugs Walk, which is an organization that I think doesn't receive nearly enough credit for all that they do in the community to keep people safe. And it was a great event despite the rain. They do a really great job with that. We met last week while Bill was away. We did our monthly town manager talk with the seniors. It's become one of the highlights of both of our months, I think. We spend an hour with the seniors, and they'll submit questions, so we'll bring one of our experts from town with us when they have a question. So Paige Duncan came and spoke about what Economic Development Committee's doing regarding downtown, trying to garner some ideas on what their vision for downtown was. And I brought Sue Thibodeau with us because turkeys are a big issue. And she had a fascinating description of the 3 angry turkeys and how they
the 3 culprits.
Mass wildlife behaviorist came out and profiled that they were sort of like a gang. And the fact that people were feeding them on Mechanic Street was really what caused them to become so aggressive. What happens is when they get comfortable with people, they start to insert people into their pecking order. So if a person feeds them, they become comfortable with them, and then when they get angry at a person, they go after them. So it's kind of, they treat them like another turkey. So then shortly after that day, one of the Mass Wildlife tried to trap the 3 turkeys. One of them was trapped and subsequently died, and then I think you all know that the second turkey met his maker over the weekend. And so now there's one.
I just can't keep a straight face
There's only one. There's only one.
Table and we're talking about this.
There's only one on the loose at this
There's
point.
a lot of buzz out there. I was at
Murdered? I don't know. What do you want me to say?
You got hit by a car. You got hit by a car. I was at the library today, meeting with the library union, and they told me that this article made it to England. So they had to press a copy of an article that was in England about Foxborough's turkeys. So
It's Barrett's fault. He put the dropkick story together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But just a reminder again about Chief O'Leary's retirement party on the 20th. Our new chief is being sworn in officially, ceremonially on Thursday. And another special thanks, I want to thank Marcia Armando for putting together both the warrant and keeping us afloat with all the licensing and the Board of Selectmen stuff. She's doing a really great, excellent job of communicating and
we're
keeping
working
it all
hard to
together.
fill that slot.
And
We really
I
are.
just want to, she's the kind of wind beneath our wings and the stuff that keeps it all going, so thank you.
Just one.
Getting all that,
Yes,
Marcia?
Did you type that in?
The wind beneath my wing, that was good. It's gonna be
One last thing I wanted to mention too is the licenses, the liquor licenses that are before the legislature right now. The two that we passed at the special town meeting a year ago actually were signed by the governor on Monday. So those are available. Those ones for Forbes Crossing.
Yep.
Those are now. We should be hearing from that any day now. So there are a couple. I think the ones for Route 140, where I think those are up for approval as well. And the only ones that haven't received final approval are the ones for the downtown, which are in the process right now. I did talk to Senator Timothy tonight. He said that there was a couple small changes in language, but that really have no significance, that you'd have to really vote it again. That should be worked out, and he was hopeful that they would be acted on Thursday. So that would mean they'd be in third reading, they'd be acted on, engrossed in the Senate, then we'd have to go back to the House, final approval, and then go to the governor's office for final approval. So that's the track that they're on. He sounded optimistic that we would get them done sooner rather than much later. So just want to give you up that, Ellie.
Can I, through the chair, just add one topic that just related to that?
Yeah.
At the same time, those home rule petitions went through for the
Yes.
liquor licenses.
Yep.
The town voted almost unanimously for the home rule petition for the child sexual abuse awareness for reporting, and it's dropped off. And I know it went to the House and Senate. It kind of got tied up in the thought process, well, if Foxborough wants it, let's look at changing the whole state, because we don't want to piecemeal it, which is fine if they want to do that. But the fact that it was submitted at the same time that these liquor licenses, and those are almost getting done, and there has been very little pushing for, or I shouldn't say pushing, but it's to the point where we've got a committee and a group that's working hard. It's going to turn saying, why hasn't this happened? And I just want to get ahead of that.
So Jim pointed to me tonight that he said that is in third reading as well. It's in the Senate right now for third reading.
Yep.
So he's waiting to hear. They did not take it up today or Monday, but they said they are going to meet again Thursday. So he's hoping maybe they'll see some action on that.
Okay. I don't want that to get forgotten.
Understood. Yeah, he mentioned that to me
If
today.
it needs a little public
he mentioned that to me.
pushing to get it done, I think we need to do it.
Okay. Great. Okay. That's all I had. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get back on that. All right. Anybody else?
That's it.
We're good?
Vera?
No, I actually don't have anything tonight. Although,
That's a first. That's a first.
Jim, did you run over that turkey?
I did witness the turkey attacking somebody. It was kind of, I'd say funny, but it was kind of funny.
Oh, my God.
We did?
Okay.
Move to close.
Second?
Motion made, second. Any discussion? Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for signing.
Yeah, sure.
Who are you on the night of?